Shalom, like all undergoing praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, like your double honors to our apostles and elders, a great millstone. Salutations to all you sincere brothers pushing this word across the four corners of the earth. This lesson is entitled, America's All Full of Lies and Robbery. And this is pursuant to a pretty good article from PressTV.com, and the title says, U.S. Deceit, Deception Against Qasem Soleimani. And this was published on January the 6th, 2020. And this is a quick quote from Syed Hassan Nasrallah. Soleimani's shoe is worth more than Trump's head. Fair punishment means that U.S. forces, bases, and warships must pay the price. Lieutenant General Qasem Soleimani, the martyred commander of the Quds Force of the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, has become the Sardar Azmani, the heavenly commander following his assassination by a terrorist act of the U.S. Now, the U.S. President, Secretary of State, and other officials are lying about this heroic Iranian martyr, whose lofty stature stands in sharp contrast to the base American politicians. America is a land built on lies and ruled by liars, and that's a very true statement made. It is ran by the so-called Caucasian race, who are the biblical Edomites. So since this country has been so-called established, it's nothing been going on but lies, deceptions, and deceits here. And America is known as Babylon the Great, according to the Bible. And Babylon goes back to the Hebrew word babal, which means confusion. What comes out of confusion? Lies, falsehoods, deceptions. And we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashal Shah, he said that he's not the author of confusion. So ever since from preschool all the way up to 12th grade, these children are getting indoctrinated by the lies of this so-called white man because he runs this so-called school system. As it says that the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. So this thing about the lies has been going on for many ages here. And another example, think about our people, the Israelites, who are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Hispanics, and Native Americans today. But majority of our people don't know who they are. They still thinking that they are Negroes or Latinos or blacks or African Americans or Native Americans. You know, the list goes on because this place, America, is built on lies. And for the majority part of these other nations, they definitely don't know who they are. But at the same time, this goes back to biblical prophecy. And this is Nahum, the 3rd chapter, and the 1st verse. Woe to the bloody city, which is going to America. It is all full of lies and robbery, the prey departing not. So I gave you some examples how this place is full of lies and robbery. Look how this place was stolen from the so-called Native Americans, from the so-called Seminole Indians, and from the so-called Mexicans. It was their land before this so-called white man made foot and set on this land. The prey departing not, and the prey is going to the Israelites. And the good example is that you watch that movie Menace to Society, when Cain, who is the main character of the movie, when he was inside that classroom talking to the teacher, which was a Jake, the Jake teacher told Cain that you are the prey. So the Spirit bear witness because we are the children of the Most High, because those curses and reproaches fit us as a people, pursuant to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, the 15th verse on down. Okay, back to the article. Dishonesty and deception abound in a country that was founded on the blood of millions of slaughtered indigenous peoples. That's talking about you so-called Seminole Indians, you so-called Native Americans, who had been assured by the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 that the utmost good fate should always be observed towards the Indians, and that laws founded in justice and humanity should from time to time be made for wrongs done to them and for peace and friendship with them. Over the centuries, the U.S. government made numerous treaties and then proceeded to break them. And you can read a lot of historical documents about how this so-called white man tried to make partnership with these peace treaties with the so-called Seminole Indians and the so-called Native American Indians. And look what happened to them. They got slaughtered. They women got raped. The children got raped. The old men, the old women got killed. Because this so-called white man, his whole MO is to attack. He lived by the sword. That's how Yahweh Bashal Shah has spiritually programmed this so-called white man to be sinister, to be the left-hand side, to be evil, to be the antagonist, which is the bad guy. But majority of our people, they can't see that. They want to continue to protest and plead to this so-called white man because they feel in their spirit that he's going to do good. He's going to act right. He's going to better himself. But they don't understand spiritually. That's how Yahweh Bashal Shah has created and molded this so-called white man to be. And this is the book of Psalm, the 55th chapter and the 19th verse. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua shall hear and afflict them, even he that abideth of old, Salah, because they have no changes. Therefore they fear not Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. Verse 20. He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. And that goes into all those peace treaties that the so-called white man made with the so-called indigenous peoples. They kept not one of those peace treaties. Verse 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. So this so-called white man spoke those smooth speeches to the so-called indigenous peoples. Like, we could be able to share this beautiful land. You could be peaceful and love amongst your people in harmony. But look what happened to them. They got slaughtered. They got massacred as a whole nation. So the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. Look how these so-called Edomite politicians be speaking. They love to use those big words and try to talk calm because they know majority of our people are simple and they're going to fall right along with their deceiving. So the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. And we can read about many historical documents. You can watch videos on YouTube, and you'll see how the so-called white man slaughtered millions upon millions of the so-called Native Americans, and definitely the so-called Negroes as well.
One Seminole leader at the time was the leader Osceola, who is justly remembered by history. Another leader who rose up at this time was John Horse, who was ethnically a black Seminole, and who would ultimately lead his people on a long and trying exodus for their freedom. In 1838, John Horse and the black Seminoles agreed to stop fighting the U.S. government in exchange for moving to what was then considered to be Indian Territory, which is now today the state of Oklahoma, and for legal recognition of their freedom. So despite the fact many of them were runaway slaves, they would have the opportunity to start over again as free individuals. Once they moved from the Everglades to Indian Territory, however, they found that their freedom was under attack, both by whites and by other Native Americans. In 1848, a decade after they had made the agreement with the U.S. government, the U.S. Attorney General announced that the government never had the authority, the power to recognize their freedom. And in fact, they were still, those who had been slaves, still enslaved. This was like opening season on them, basically declaring that they were there for the picking. And so they did the only thing they could do. They fled once again.
And this is the book of Sirach, the 12th chapter and the 10th verse. Never trust thy enemy, and that's a commandment. For like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness. And you want to know who your enemies are? It's all the nations that's mentioned in the book of Psalm, the 83rd chapter, which is all these nations. But for like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness. So as iron rusted over a period of time, this is how the so-called white man is with his wickedness. Just compare the times from 1920s to 1930s, and look how more wicked this whole world is by the vibration of this so-called white man. Everything is becoming more wicked, more evil, more weirder, because this so-called white man, he's placing that seat of rulership right now. Therefore, he controls this narrative at the moment. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast a wipe a looking glass. And thou shalt know that his rust had not been altogether wiped away. And the rust goes into his wickedness, because Yahweh Ba'ashem has molded this so-called white man to be that vessel of dishonor. But majority of our people cannot see that. They want to continue to think that this so-called white man is going to change for the better. But a lot of our people are going to see that true nature of this so-called white man. And as the scriptures say, that he's going to be like a madman sparing none, because this so-called white man knows his rulership is coming to an end. Therefore, he's about to come down on our people with a great wrath. So that old ancient hatred spirit of Esau is going to be developed back into these Edomites. Set him not by thee, lest when he have overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat. And thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith. And that's exactly what these so-called indigenous people did. They welcomed Esau in. They welcomed him into their home. They fed them. They showed them how to hunt, how to survive the land, how to plant crops and things of that such. And look what happened to them. And I'll jump down to verse 16. An enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagined how to throw thee into a pit. He will weep with his eyes, but if he find opportunity, he would not be satisfied with blood. And think about their forefather Esau, when he said that when Isaac, his father, died, that he's going to slay Jacob with a sword, and that same spirit is still upon these Edomites. If adversity come upon thee, thou shalt find him there first, and though he pretend to help thee, yet shall he undermine thee. So we have to think about that through the spirit. When this so-called white man try to do good gestures, try to smile in our faces or try to shake our hand, always have in your spirit that this is the damn devil that the Bible speaks about. He's that deceiver. He's that falsifier. He would shake his head and clap his hands and whisper much and change his countenance. He definitely changed his countenance with the so-called indigenous peoples. Okay, back to the article. U.S. officials lied about the My Lai massacre, which was carried out by American soldiers under command of Lieutenant William Calley on March 16, 1968. Between 450 and 500 Vietnamese, mostly women, children, and old men, were mercilessly gunned down, and the U.S. Army covered up what happened. That is until journalist Seymour Hersh exposed American atrocity, which by no means was unique. So this guy, Seymour Hersh, he's an Edomite American political writer, and he started bringing up the catastrophes and the atrocities that was happening over there in Vietnam. And that's also pursuant to biblical prophecy. And this is the book of Psalm, the 64th chapter, and the 8th verse. So they should make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them should flee away. And that's the vibration that Yahweh Shah has put on these so-called whistleblowers. Ones of those people that was a part of the government, now they're exposing the government, and they bringing out the truth about this so-called American system. That's Yahweh Shah. He's raising that skirt upon this whore Babylon. And all nations and all people are seeing what this country is really about. It's not as great as they proclaim it to be. It says right here, even the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August 1964, which U.S. President Lyndon Johnson and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara used as a pretext to escalate American involvement in Vietnam, was a fabrication, another lie, another falsehood. And to further prove this point, how this so-called Vietnam War was nothing but fabrication and falsehoods, this is an article from newstarget.com, and the title says, the U.S. finally admits Agent Orange residue poisoned its own soldiers. This came out in May 2016. After decades of denial, the Department of Veteran Affairs finally acknowledged that the Monsanto's Agent Orange, a herbicide sprayed across Vietnam during the war, was responsible for the health ailments of over 2,100 Air Force servicemen. Just get to this other point, the toxicity of Agent Orange. According to the Nonpartisan Aspen Institute in Washington, D.C., Agent Orange was an herbicide used by the military to defoliate the Vietnamese jungle and expose Vietnam Cong and North Vietnamese troops using the jungle as a cover to move men and material to South Vietnam. Even though its use ended decades ago, the toxic contaminant of Agent Orange, dioxin, did not degrade as readily and is still causing health problems in Vietnam. The Red Cross estimates that 3 million Vietnamese have been affected by dioxin, including at least 150,000 children born with serious birth defects, said the Institute. Millions of Americans and Vietnamese are still affected directly and indirectly by the wartime U.S. spraying Agent Orange and other herbicides over southern and central Vietnam. And I know this first and foremost because my father, when he was here on this earthly realm, he fought in the Vietnam War. And he had problems due to this Agent Orange contaminant. He suffered a lot due to this Agent Orange, So this so-called white man, everything is coming out to the light, man. At the water too, Yahweh Shah exposing this damn demon, man. More recently, U.S. President George W. Bush lied to the American people by saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction in order to justify a pre-planned invasion of Iraq for the purpose of usurping the country's oil wealth. On February 5, 2003, U.S. General Colin Powell lied before the United Nations Security Council on behalf of his boss W, accusing Saddam of manufacturing weapons of mass destruction and having links with the terrorists that committed the 9/11 attacks, none of which was true. U.S. politicians and officials have a long history of lying. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo acknowledged this truth himself during a Q&A session at Texas A&M University in April 2019. Pompeo admitted that as a West Point cadet, he was told you would not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. Yet, as CIA director, he confessed, we lied, we cheated, we stole. At this point, Pompeo has threatened a decisive and vigorous response should Iran rightfully respond to this act of American terrorism. And in almost the next breath, he has asserted that the Washington regime is committed to de-escalation. So altogether, you have a lot of our people, they want to fight for this so-called white man, not knowing what they really are fighting for. So that's what they do. They paint the picture of these other nations as a terrorist, as the big boogeyman, just because they don't agree with the ways of America, and they push it heavily out through their mainstream media outlets. They keep pushing it in your subconscious, and you start receiving it and believing everything that they are saying. So you feel rightfully so when America go over there and attack them, but you don't know the true reason. That's for gold, oil, and drugs. And that's something I just personally learned through the Spirit. If you see Esau constantly pushing something heavily in the mainstream news, you have to question it. But this so-called white man, he's full of lies, deceptions, and deceits. But I'm going to leave the rest of this article in the description box for you all to read and check out. It's a pretty good article. And it goes into more details of how America was going to kill this Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani. But just 3 years ago, CNN was crediting this Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani, for defeating ISIS. But now they are deeming him as the biggest terrorist on this earth. And that just further proves that this so-called white man, he controls the narrative. And we already know by default this so-called white man is a liar and a deceiver, a false accuser. We already know that the narrative is going to be the same way. So everything's coming to the light on America and the people that run America. This is the book of Luke, the 8th chapter and the 17th verse. For nothing is secret that should not be made manifest, neither anything hid that should not be known and come abroad. And that was the biggest power or strength of the so-called Illuminati, which was their secrecy. And through the doings of Yahweh Shai, he put his spirit upon these different whistleblowers to bring that out to the light. Now the so-called word Illuminati is a household name now. And for full spectrum of truth, that's also he put his spirit upon his holy prophets to bring everything out to the forefront. And that's all by the doings of Yahweh Shai. We are at the end of the so-called white man's empire or his movie. Just like in the movie, you have a protagonist, you have the antagonist. The protagonist is the good guy, the antagonist is the bad guy. In this case, the Israelites are the protagonists, starting with the elect. The antagonists are these Edomites. So throughout the whole movie, you see the protagonist getting beat up, he's getting lied upon, he's getting his name dragged all through the mud, and he's getting persecuted. But some way, somehow, at the end of that movie, the truth comes out. The light is being shed who really was the bad guy of that movie. So it's no different in the Most High's movie. The light's being shed upon this so-called white man for all the evil plots and schemes, all the wrongdoings, all the murders, all the things that he's been doing since he's been a nation on this planet Earth. The whole world seeing and exposing this so-called white man for everything that he has been doing. So the truth is coming out. There's nothing they can do to stop the truth. The truth will always win. And I hope this lesson was edifying to you all. America's all full of lies and robbery. And with that, I'd like to give all honor and glory again to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Kakodash, double honors again to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to all you sincere brothers. Shalom.